Good morning and welcome to the Christ Central morning devotional. I'm Alistair Semple. I'm one of the crew here, and we are working through a number of Psalms in these coming weeks. And I have got Psalm 2, and I'm just going to share my screen with you because Psalm 2 is one of the most quoted Psalms in the New Testament. So, in Acts 13, we tell you the good news. What God promised our ancestors, he has fulfilled for us, their children, by raising up Jesus, as is written in the second Psalm, "You are my son. Today I have become your father." It's interesting to note that even here in the book of Acts, this is identified as a second psalm. Why is that interesting to note? Surely that's the way it's always been. Well, apparently Psalm 1 and Psalm 2, for some period of their life, were all in one psalm. But at some point, and this is some point before the book of Acts and some point before the birth of Jesus, they were separated into two psalms. A lot of thought has gone into the construction of the book of Psalms. It was probably, like much of the rest of the Old Testament, put into its final form in the way that we see it today, while the Jews were in exile in Babylon. So right in the heart of enemy territory was the point where a lot of the scholars had real opportunity to focus on how do we make sense of this revelation of God to us? And a lot of time was taken there. So the book of Psalms probably coalesced in the form that we have it today, at least then, if not before, but at least then. And Psalm 2 comes with no title. But in the New Testament, again, in the book of Acts, again, we find that it's attributed to David. And that's not a controversial thing necessarily, though it isn't something that is labelled up as such in the book of Psalms. Now, I'm about to read it, and we're going to read through it. But I want to say one other thing. In putting this book of Psalms together, it comes into a number of different sections, and we're obviously in section 1. Psalm 1 and potentially Psalm 1 and 2 are seen as the entryway to the entire book of Psalms, or the books of Psalms, because there are 4 or 5 of them. And they set the scene. And even if they are separated, and let's take it that they were separated for good reason, both of them are scene-setting Psalms. So Psalm 1, as we heard from Fiona yesterday, and please, if you are listening to this and you didn't hear about Psalm 1 yesterday, do go back and see the video that will be the recording of Fiona's introduction to Psalm 1. Psalm 1 talks about 2 paths. You can lead a life towards righteousness or a life of rebellion. One ends well, one ends badly. This one, then, is very much, as far as New Testament writers have seen, a messianic psalm. Though at the point it was written, and if it was written by David, it was probably written with him as the anointed character that's in this psalm. But David's descendant, Jesus, this would extend to. So it's not a surprise to see it as a messianic psalm in the New Testament perspective. And it is probably the main reason why it is the most quoted psalm in the New Testament. Now, think of our world and its current turmoil, which is actually not very much different to its normal state of being, but just very much more on display at the moment. Why do the nations conspire, the peoples plot in vain? The kings of the earth rise up and the rulers band together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us break their chains and throw off their shackles. There is this, and if we take it as a messianic psalm, this is talking about the spiritual reality of humanity, who rages against, and that word conspire can be translated as rage, who rage against this idea that we are not independent, that we are not free, that we are not able to make up our own mind and have no consequences. Actually, there is a hatred of God in many hearts. And Psalm 2 focuses on that. And actually, it's a weird thing, because the one enthroned in heaven laughs. The Lord scoffs at them. He rebukes them in his anger, terrifies them in his wrath, saying, I've installed my king on Zion, my holy mountain. I mean, if there was ever an asymmetric war, if there was ever a sort of real David and Goliath, where David isn't the good guy, but is just the little boy, and the giant, the most enormous warrior, stands in front of someone who really shouldn't take him down, which is why the thing of David and Goliath makes such an amazing illustration. But the other way around, the normal way around, God's laughing. I mean, human will that thinks it can assert itself over the creator of the universe, it just doesn't make sense. Now, this language might sort of put you off, but this is really what it's just saying this is a ludicrous thing. You're either going to get angry, or you're just going to laugh, or something of that. There's a righteous response here, which may not look like a righteous response to us, but it's sort of, this is bizarre. This is such a strange thing. The creator of the universe told to sort of sit in his box. And he says, well, actually, and here's the messianic dimension, I've installed my king on Zion, my holy mountain. He's on his way. So I've put in some of the places where the references where Psalm 2 gets quoted, identified as the second psalm in Acts 13. I will proclaim the Lord's decree. He said to me, you are my son. Today I have become your father. Ask me and I will make the nations your inheritance, the ends of the earth your possession. You will break them with a rod of iron. You will dash them to pieces like pottery. All of that, in real terms, happened on the cross, the demolition of the separation of sin, opening the door to those nations to be able to come in. It still looks quite judgy when you're looking at some of those quotes ending up in Revelation. That's not a surprise. The idea that the nations are broken with a rod of iron and smashed up like old pottery. And I think what you're seeing there is the embodiment of this rebellion is finally broken, and there will be that day. And so it's good, therefore, to read this as the closing section of this psalm, because this is not and you're all going to be killed, and you're all going to be judged, and you're all going to be laid out. This is an appeal at this point. Therefore, you kings, be wise. Be warned, you rulers of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear and celebrate his rule with trembling. Kiss the Son, or he will be angry, and your way will lead to your destruction, for his wrath can flare up in a moment. Blessed are all who take refuge in him. And here's my final thought for this. And back to is this one psalm or two psalms? All the psalms of David, which are attributed to David, start pretty much and end pretty much with the same formula. And it's that word blessed. Blessed are you at the beginning, and blessed are you at the end. And in Psalm 1 and Psalm 2, Psalm 1 verse 1, blessed. First verse. Psalm 2, end verse, blessed are all who take refuge in him. Happy, sometimes translated healthy, in a good place. Blessed are you who take refuge in him. So today, blessed are you if you take refuge in him. So be wise, but also be warned. There are some stupid things going on in our world, and their way leads to destruction. And part of our witness is to shine a light on it and say, isn't this stupid? Isn't this mad? Doesn't it make you either laugh or become angry? This shouldn't be. This isn't right. Blessed is the Lord. You can take refuge in him. And with that, we come to prayer.